Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at The Captain is Dead. This is the AEG version. This game originally came out as like a print and play, and AEG picked it up and made this full production copy of it. It's a pretty cool game based on kind of like a spoof of Star Trek. You're on a ship and it's under attack, your captain is dead, and you play various other crewmen who are trying to get the engines back online so you can get out of there. Meanwhile, alien ships are attacking you, they're beaming onto the ship, systems are failing, and things like that. And everything looks really cool. There's a lot of neat components in here, and we'll get right in and take a look. So the first thing we have is our rule book here, and it's pretty straightforward. They have a components list in the front, and then how the game works and so on. There's all the different roles of the different characters you can play, and the different systems of the ship. It's a little vague in some areas, but it's nothing that after a play or two you won't figure out easy enough. I even have an example of play over here. There's a strategy guide in the back, and different variants as well, so you can change things up a little bit. And there's a cheat sheet on the back for what it takes to activate the various systems. So the board is a really cool part of this here, and they've done a lot of work on it, and I don't know if you'll be able to see on the camera if I can get it just right. It's got a glossy finish over certain areas and the lettering to make it all stand out. And it looks complicated at first, but in the center here you've got basically the layout of the ship, the bridge, there's hallways, you got the war room and armory, more hallways, there's an infirmary, a cargo hold, science lab, engineering, and the computer core. And then these arrows actually point out to the reference cards on the side. In this case, this is our torpedo tube, and it references that it's in the armory. Things like that, so all the systems you can tell which rooms they're in, and where you need to be in order to access those systems. All of the ship systems are represented by these cards. They're also printed on the actual board, which put these system cards on those locations, and if something happens during the course of the game that would knock out one of the systems, you flip the card over to its offline, and then it tells you what you need to do in order to return that system to being online again. And there's one of these for each of the main systems of the ship. There's our torpedo tube, so that would go right here. If something knocks the torpedo tubes offline, you flip it over. So next we have the battle plans. These are available in the war room up here from the Captain's Journal. And they basically give you bonuses and things. They're one use, and they let you win the game more easily by using them. It is possible to win the game without them, just they give you the nice little edge, and it makes things a lot easier if you do use them. Next we have our alert cards, and these are yellow, orange, and red. There's 3 different decks of them, and they progressively get worse as things go on. And these are going to be the events that pop up during the game. So in this case, we got a torpedo tubes are offline, we reduce our shields by 10%, and we lose our torpedo tubes. You can override it with the proper skill cards down here. If your external sensors, which are up here, are online, you're going to actually be able to see the next 2 ones of these that are coming up and plan ahead to deal with them. Or once those go down, these actually get played directly off the top of the deck, so you have no idea what's coming. So it's a good idea to keep those sensors online as much as possible. Next we have our equipment cards. These are just items that you're going to be using to give you bonuses and help you accomplish certain things. These are going to start the game in the cargo pod. Then we have our upgrades. These are additional systems and things that can be added to the ship. They start offline, and you have to go to the science lab and research them in order to get them. Lots of cool bonuses in there once they're online that'll help you with various things. Next we have our skill cards. And these are what you're pretty much going to be using to do everything throughout the game. You can have a handful of these, and they come in tactical, command, engineering, and science. And these are what you use to activate the various abilities on the cards and different systems on the ship, as well as repair things back online. You need the proper symbols to do whatever it is that you're trying to do. Next we have these cool torpedo tokens. They represent your ammunition. You start with 5 of them in play, and you can actually build more as the game progresses if you need more. I do like the cool little torpedo tokens though. They're neat looking, and they give you 7 of them there, so you have some spares for being able to rebuild extras here. Next we have all of our crew. And these are kind of neat. They come in different classes based on the colors, and there's tons of different characters to choose from here. All of them on the back have a list of actions that you can do during your turn. So each of the various characters has a rank up here. The lower the number, the higher rank. So the admiral and the first officer here would get to go first, and so on down to the rank 7 guys. Up here is your number of cards you can have in your hand. These are the bonus skills that they get. Basically, they get a discount on those off of any ability you try to activate. And this is how many actions per turn they can take. And then each one of them has a special skill here on the bottom that's unique to the character. And depending on who you choose to use can really influence the difficulty of the game. Ideally, you want people from multiple classes that can do multiple things, but at the same time, you can pick some of these low-end guys, and who doesn't want to see the janitor save the ship from being destroyed? A lot of variety there with so many different characters to choose from. It really adds to the replay value since the game can be different every time. These are one of the really cool things about the game, and I don't know how well it's going to focus there. That's a little better. The tokens for the characters are all made of like clear acrylic, and then they're on these color-coded bases to their job classes. And those color-coded also depends on where they start. So in this case, our first officer would start in the war room because you match the color to the bases. And there's a ton of these different characters because you got one for every card in there. So there you can see a whole ton of our crew members. Little token for each of them. You're never going to have all of them on the board at the same time. It all depends on how many players you're going to have. But it's cool to have that many options. And I love the fact, and it makes it kind of hard to see on the camera unfortunately, but the game itself is so bright and colorful on the table that people will walk by, they'll see it, and they'll stop and start asking questions about it, which is really cool. Now, of course, you need aliens, so there's a whole bunch of these alien guys to represent them when they beam onto your ship. And then you have these acrylic bar tokens. One will go on your shield. If your shield ever drops to 0%, the game is over. Another one goes over on your jump core. This is basically how hard of a game you want to have. The farther down you put it, the harder the game will be. And you can start all the way up at coward if you want. And you have an extra one as well for things that come out later. The box has a really good insert. It's kind of functional. The deck slots, however, do not fit the cards once they're sleeved, but there's plenty of room to stick them in here, and you can put the character tokens in those. Love this little thing here to put the torpedoes in, and then this is for the smaller decks here. Works pretty good to hold everything, so I might not be replacing that like I do with a lot of games. And that's a look at everything that comes in the box. The game itself is pretty fun. If you're a Star Trek fan, Galaxy Quest, the Orville, which is newer, any of those, you're probably going to enjoy it. It's very thematic and looks great on the table. There are a couple small complaints about it. There is a typo on one of the medic cards. Another thing that bothered some people to an extent are some of the artwork for the character tokens. As cool as these character tokens are, I think they were designed to go on an oval shaped token or something. And you have artwork like this that actually goes off the side of the piece, so it looks like they're misprinted. But that's the way they were originally intended to be. It's just the pose that they're in wouldn't fit on there any other way. There's a couple of them like that. Some people complained about it. It's not that big of a deal. The only other complaint I had was that despite the number of characters to choose from, the same general strategies always seem to work to play the game out. And that's going to change a little bit depending on what alerts come up and what battle plans are in play. But overall, the same strategy works every time. So if you play the game a lot, it's going to get that familiar feel to it. The same type of tactics are always going to work regardless of who you're playing. Who you're playing just makes some things easier and favors some play styles a little more than others. So there is a variety there. And as long as you're playing with a fun group, you're not even going to notice because you get into character and you have a blast doing it if you're with the right people. Overall, though, the quality of everything is outstanding. The torpedo tokens are cool. I love the 3D acrylic character tokens. All the bright colors, as I mentioned earlier, stand out and make the game really pop and look nice on the table. As I said, every time we've had this out, people have walked by and all of a sudden they just stop and they're like, what's that? And then they'll start looking into it. There's enough here that it'll appeal to non-Star Trek fans too, people who aren't into that type of genre, but it really caters to them. Definitely like the co-op aspect of the game as well. Too many games like this are always a versus. I like working together as a team to overcome the challenges that come up. And it is possible to lose even on the easier settings depending on how things happen. Love the fact there's no dice. We're back to a card-only game, which I mentioned in a different review that I love games without dice. So many games nowadays rely on dice, and there's that random factor. Now, you still have randomness in here because you're drawing cards, but it's a lot more strategy in the fact that you're just trying to match up the symbols on the skill cards with the abilities you want to trigger. You have to be in the certain rooms, too. But I love the way you could have a whole plan laid out and then aliens beam in and then you got to deal with them. And they're kind of generic. They don't move. They don't attack. They just block you from doing anything. The only thing you can do to the aliens is fight them or beam away from them. So it may change what you were planning on doing. On the same thing, you may be relying on certain systems to be online in order to do the things that you need to do. And those systems might get knocked out and then you got to repair them before you can do your plan. So there's a lot of chain reaction things going. Things like the holographic crew member. He's here in the middle, it's hard to see. But he's an amazing character, one of the most powerful characters in there. But he has the highest initiative. I think he's a 7. So he's always going last. And anytime the holo emitters go down on the computers, he's useless. So he has his trade-offs too. Little things like that, very thematic as well. But overall, it's a really fun game. Definitely need to play it some more to introduce it to some new people. I think the more people that you have playing, the better. The game supports up to 7 players at a time, which is nice. And down to as low as 2. You could theoretically play the game with 1 player and just play 2 characters. I think that'll work. I haven't actually tried it, but I don't see why it wouldn't. One of the big things you got to keep in mind, though, that I kind of glossed over is when the alerts come up, they have those override codes on them. The alert that pops up during your turn, that's the only time that you can attempt to override it. So each player is responsible for coming up with the overrides on their turn for the various alerts. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. While everything else is kind of co-op on what you're doing, you do need to keep that in mind. Overall, though, the game's fun. It's pretty fast, and has a lot of cool little details in it that make it really stand out to the Trek fan in me. And I really enjoyed it. That's going to wrap it up for our look at The Captain is Dead from AEG. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.